Diva Khorja, welcome to our second interview on Nationalist discussion. And today we have a guest, and apologies in advance as my throat has been killing me. And could be COVID, who knows? No, I'm messing with you. It's definitely not the scamdemic. But so today we will have our special guest from the Netherlands, Jan from Geuzenbond, and he will now introduce himself to our audience.
Yes, hello. My name is Jan, not to be confused with our friendly host today. I'm active. I've been active in nationalist organizing since 2018. I'm in a leadership function in Geuzenbond. I'm responsible for a lot of, national coordination of sorts. And I'm also heavily involved in the editing of our magazine.
Thanks for explaining your role and introducing yourself to our audience. Now, for our Irish audience, would you like to go into a bit of detail at what Geuzenbond is and what the core beliefs are?
Sure. So Geuzenbond is a Dutch nationalist youth organization. We're pan-Dutch, so we believe in the establishment of a greater Netherlands state. We are nationalists, of course. We believe in solidarism, and to put it even shorter, I guess, we are the future.
Their slogan is "Slin on Tauchi," like the future is ours. That's the Nationalist slogan.
Exactly.
But tell us, you mentioned there the Greater Netherlands. What is that? Because a lot of our audience obviously it's Irish based, I'm sure, although there must be some Dutch lads listening and maybe other international people from around Europe. But what is the Greater Netherlands? Explain it to our Irish audience. They haven't a clue, I don't think.
Yeah. The pan-Dutch or Greater Netherlands ideology is basically the belief that all Dutch-speaking populations of the European continent belong to the same nation. So we believe these territories, which are not only the Netherlands but also the Dutch-speaking part of Belgium, Flanders, and even a small part of France, which is traditionally Dutch-speaking, should be brought into one state.
Would that include, obviously, Wallonia, for example, is a French-speaking part of Belgium, but would that be included in the Greater Netherlands ideology?
There are variations. There have been thinkers in the past who said Walloons are actually they are originally Dutch, but even if that may be the case, I think the distance between the rift between Flanders, Dutch-speaking Belgium, and French-speaking Belgium is too large to exist within the same state at this point.
I can see what you mean. Even just electorally, you can see the massive difference that the populations, the way they vote, the voting patterns that each have the gap is humongous. To be honest with you, and would you like to explain what sets? Because obviously in the Netherlands, you're not the only, let's say, radical right-wing group. There are multiple other ones. So what sets you apart from these other radical right-wing groups?
Yeah. So there are several things. I think it will be important to especially compare it to other radical right youth organizations, or dissident right, I suppose. So there are several things that make us unique. First of all, we as a group, we aren't just a collection of people who oppose several things. We aren't united, we aren't a collection of people who vaguely associate with anything to the right of what is mainstream. Instead, we are united by what we want to achieve. We are united by ideology, and I think that's what sets us apart from several other right-wing youth groups in the Netherlands, is that we actually have a very, a positive messaging. We usually, and I don't mean it in the way of emotions, but I mean it in the way of we always present what we want to establish, what we want to create, instead of what we oppose. Of course, from our principles, we oppose a lot of things in the modern world. There's a lot of things that are wrong, but we always act on the basis of our nationalist principles. Besides that, I feel that we are actually the only youth movement that seeks to be uniquely Dutch in character, Dutch in ideology. You see a lot of other groups. They take their ideologies from the internet. They take their ideologies from, which is usually American dominated, and they try to mimic things from that. And even I would say other groups, youth groups in our country, if you would change the language they use, they would be able to exist in every single nation, at least Western nation. Meanwhile,
the kind of copy paste Republican style right wing,
exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. So, and I think if you would try that with us, if you would try to place us in another country, it wouldn't work. We have Dutch symbolism. We always refer to Dutch ideologues. We do our best to be distinctively Dutch in both character and ideology, and I think that's what sets us apart from a lot of other groups.
Maintaining your roots basically is key to any nationalist movement, and I can see that from just peering in from like what we've talked about in the past about the political scene. I can tell, and I'm not even Dutch, like I can tell that there is a huge difference. You can see the milquetoast conservative types, and then you can see the actual genuine nationalists, and it is quite stark. It's quite stark. It's very. We have sort of that in Ireland, especially with some other groups, you could say, on the right wing, that have a very Anglo look on certain economic issues, and the National Party is just completely different. Like, we have it based in Ireland with Irish roots, completely. And obviously now, speaking about politics and that sort of meta politics to an extent, we could say, what is your long-term strategy? Because obviously, for a bit of context wise, why I'm asking this is because Geuzenbond isn't a youth wing of a political party. It's not
Correct.
like Nationalist. So correct. You are a student movement. Am I correct in saying that?
No, we are in the student movement, but a lot of students are members. We are a movement from people between 17 and 27. But yes, to touch on our strategy, yes, there is no genuine nationalist party in the Netherlands, and this is because to gain success, most parties will always conform to the liberal status quo. This is because in the Netherlands it's different in Flanders, where there is a real nationalist movement, a nationalist party, but in the Netherlands there's no fertile soil for such a political party right now. So what our strategy actually is to you mentioned meta politics. That's a very important part of it, to create such a climate in which a party could exist and flourish and grow. This will take a lot of time, but so to create such a climate, we on one side we focus on meta politics, influencing the public debate, but we also have an idea of creating an ecosystem based on ideology. To explain this a bit more extensively, we have this idea which we call the nationalist pillar. Well, for international listeners, this will not be very clear what a pillar is, so I will have to do a bit of historical explaining. In Dutch society in the last century, until secularization, was divided in pillars. And pillars were parts of society corresponding to a certain religion or worldview. So you had a nationalist, you had a Protestant pillar, a Catholic pillar, a socialist pillar, and a liberal pillar. All of these pillars, they had their own institutions. They had their own broadcasting corporations. They had their own sports associations, their own youth groups, their own, you name it, everything. And of course, eventually, the way they influenced national level, they had a political party corresponding to this pillar. Now, since, like I mentioned, since secularization, these pillars have disappeared, and the Netherlands has become, basically as every part of the Western world, a atomized society where individualism runs rampant. So, with a bit of historical context, we look towards the concept of a pillar as a very useful way of creating a climate in which political influence can eventually be expressed. This means we don't only focus on our activism, but we do this. We also help other initiatives we see as useful for such a future pillar. Basically, to hope to create a society. A real society, a community within within this atomized country of today.
Essentially, what you want to do is push the Overton window further to your side and allow for hopefully a mainstream party or for a new political party that will come about to grab hold a lot of your ideas and a lot of the Dutch nationalist ideas and implement it within their party political machine, is what you're saying to me, basically.
And not just the ideas, because they can take over talking points, of course. But if you have a solid group of, a part of society in which people are raised, people grow up, people, live within. Basically, you always have a base to fill party ranks, basically. So this larger movement could eventually enter such a party.
Very interesting. And do you think that you had to, would you say that from when you were founded and to the present day, did you have to change? Do you think you had to change any of your tactics? Maybe not your strategy. I'd say your strategy seems like, locked in, rock solid. But did you have to change any tactics to get around certain issues that you were facing in the past?
Yeah, there's been some, basically a lot of restructuring. When we started out, we were kind of a loose organization, like in 2018, 2019. You could join if you wanted. You could join in activities if you wanted to. We had no real hierarchy. So we've basically streamlined processes. We've been doing a lot of more consistent activity, consistent activism as well. So yeah, that's mostly what has changed. Some restructuring.
Yeah, speaking of activism, actually, like one of your recent, apart from obviously you've been very good with stickering very regularly, similar to us. Actually, we've been doing a lot of stickering. Well, yeah, we haven't, but but like one of your big events was it Build Fortress Europa, was it?
Yep, Build Fortress Europa.
That was very cool. Would you like to talk about the idea behind it?
Yeah, so the idea has been actually floating around for a long time. we wanted to do an action which establishes our view on migration. And, we thought, like symbolically occupying a real fortress or a real fortification would be a very good way to send the message of, demanding a stricter or basically closed borders and demanding a Dutch future. So that was the idea behind it. It took a lot of planning, but I think it went pretty well.
Pretty good. I saw that you had and there was a good number of lads that were there as well, which gave it a very cool scene about it. I really liked the pictures. I thought they were great. And that brings me to, you touched on immigration briefly in that on your Build Fortress Europa. You talked about migration. Like, what have the effects of mass immigration been like on the Netherlands? Because I think that like the Netherlands is much more advanced than Ireland is in terms of like, migratory patterns and extra Europeans coming in, all these foreigners. So would you like to touch on it just briefly?
Yeah, sure. The Netherlands, it has a huge migration problem. Several cities, big cities are, completely replaced or like half replaced. So yeah, I would say definitely we are much further into the process of replacement migration in this country, and it causes the usual, the same kind of troubles it does everywhere: crime, if the native language not being spoken, general feeling of unsafety.
Yeah, natives being terrorized and natives being replaced. It's the same. You see this everywhere. You see this in France, Germany, all the Western European countries. You're seeing this. You're starting to see this in Dublin a lot, and especially actually around like our government has taken a bit of a different approach, notably than other governments, in the sense that they create direct provision centres, and they basically dump 200, sometimes 250, military-aged men from Africa, from the Middle East, and they just dump them in this town, and they already outnumber the military-aged men of the town by 3 times.
Yeah,
it's total invasion.
It's the same thing here. They you will notice the asylum centers are never near the big liberal cities. They're always near in rural areas. I would like to add with the troubles of migration. The Netherlands is a very, very, very crowded country. So you can imagine there's a huge housing crisis going on, and obviously this has a lot of issues for a lot of this is affected by migration, because 97% of the population growth in the Netherlands is due to migration.
It's very stark. But yeah, so, and back to like, now we touched on immigration, obviously, like that was just we just had to absolutely touch on it because it is an issue that's plaguing Europe, all over the Western world, be it United States as well, Australia and New Zealand. But back to Geuzenbond, back to your organization. I noticed that the way you present yourselves is very impressive. I've seen like pictures and images of other groups within the Netherlands, be it party political or outside of the party political reign. I've noticed that your presentation is far better, and your symbolism is also much more interesting than other groups. Would you like to go into that a bit?
Yeah, sure. The main thing is that we don't try to emulate anything from the past, from last century or the century before. We are 21st century nationalists, so this is our style. We think the current style we have is one that is both modern but also true to the the eternal flame of nationalism, of Dutch nationalism. So I think it's a perfect combination to express yourselves as a 21st century nationalist. And I think it's your organization does it very well as well. So, and touching on the symbolism, we use a lot of actually very symbolism from the Dutch revolt against Spain. For some reason, it's the most well-known expression of nationalism, of independence, of sovereignty in Dutch history. Yet, basically, no one thinks of using these symbols. They look at other nations.
What's the meaning behind the symbol that you hold on some of your flags? You have the lantern. Would you like to talk about that real quick?
Yeah, it's it's a storm lantern. As a people, as a nation, we find ourselves in very very stormy weather. It's very dark times. These are not the best times for people. And we view it as the light of nationalism. The light to follow in this darkness. That's basically what the symbol means.
Also, the flag itself, you have a lot of people will recognize I think it's like the red, it's the blue, white, and red, but you guys have the blue, white, and orange.
Yes.
Why that flag over the current flag that the state has?
Well, the orange, white, blue flag and variations of it, these were the original flags used in the revolt, in our national independence struggle. So, the current situation we are in, we think this is the symbol of nationalism. It's a symbol of sovereignty. It's a symbol of independence, and that's why we choose this flag.
Because it's very it's very how do you say, you can really notice it. I noticed when you did banner drops and when you did the that big anti-lockdown demo with the banner, when you had the flags, you can tell from a mile away, it's very noticeable. And that anti-lockdown demonstration that you had back, when was it again? It was a couple of months back. Yeah, February. How did that go for you? That was one of your first big demonstrations, if I'm correct.
Yeah, and it was also we've done a few handout flyers and such at previous anti-lockdown rallies, but this was the first time actually participating in such a rally. I think it went fairly well. You had people, of course, a bit more skeptical, but actually you had a lot of people who were very positive about our message. They liked our banner. Our banner had a part of our national anthem which says to drive away tyranny, and we thought that would, of course, be a very fitting line to use on the banner. A lot of people liked that, and the demonstration, it went fine. Most most of the negative reactions actually were on the internet, but
internet fiend, literally, it's all the time. We have it here in Ireland as well, and I think you have that anywhere you go. You have the do-nothingers who sit around, do nothing all day but complain that someone needs to do something. But we are doing our best here, and everyone around us is doing our best, but they're sitting at home typing away, absolute keyboard warriors. Would you plan on doing, if the opportunity arose again, would you think that you would do another banner style demonstration as you did during the anti-lockdown?
Well, there's several types of banner demonstrations. Like if you mean walking along in a protest, like at the lockdown rally.
Yeah, like that one. Because obviously, like you do the one with, I've seen the one over the bridges, which is very similar to us. We've done a lot of them, and they're really cool, especially when you get the cars beeping like in support. Obviously, you know, it shows that the message that you portray is a lot more common and a lot more acceptable by the public than the media will make it out, because a lot of people in the media, and especially on and a lot of naysayers on the right, to an extent, on the radical right, they will have you say that, oh, nobody believes in what you believe in, you know. But that's not true. That is not true. And from someone like, I've canvassed doors during elections, during the Dublin Bay South by-election, during the 2020 general election, and I can tell you for a fact, the only thing that people said to me was, "Who are you?" You know, like, I've never heard of the National Party before, or I've never heard of this, never heard of that. It wasn't, you know, I hate your message. You get the odd liberal type who will say, or the odd communist or socialist who will say, oh, I despise your messaging, of course. But the great majority are very supportive, but they just don't know who you are.
Yeah. A lot of people, when you go on in real life, they you know, sometimes I'm surprised, you know, the online and the things you read, you know, you think a lot of people dislike your message, but they don't, and it's good to remember that.
It is very important to remember it, especially in our age now, the digital age. You know, a lot of people tend to get demoralized online. If they're terminally online, they get easily demoralized, because at the end of the day, online will show you some of the worst that society brings. But you have to remember that there is positives out there, and it's only when you go out there and interact with the public, you find those positives. You find that things aren't lost. We just need to work hard for it. And people do need to come around to, like, we need to work hard for it. There is a long path, long road ahead, but it's coming soon. I can feel it. I'm very hopeful for the future. Are you hopeful for the future?
I'm very hopeful for the future. You know, you see a lot of young people. You know, they come over us, and a lot of them are what you would call, you know, they are very negative about the outlook of the future. And once they get involved, they get around people who think the same. But also, once they start doing things, you know, they become a lot more positive about the future. So I have a lot of hope. Yeah, we will win. That's my conviction.
Yeah, we will. Sorry, I had a bit of an issue there on my laptop, but yeah, no, we will win. We will win. I'm very confident that we will win. Now, obviously, with the Netherlands, kind of, you know, and the Greater Netherlands, Flanders is not a part of the Netherlands at the moment. Do you think that with the way things are going within Flanders, with the rise of Vlaams Belang and the rise of, even, I think there's another party there that's second, if I remember correctly, that is also an independentist, mispronounced the word, but sure, look. Do you think that they have a chance of rejoining with the Netherlands in the near future?
You know, the first step is breaking up Belgium and Flemish independence. That's the first step. But yeah, I think there absolutely is a chance. A lot of prominent pro-independence politicians, they do support Dutch unity. Do I think it would be wise to unite like tomorrow? I'm not certain. Why? You know, the Netherlands is traditionally a lot more left-wing liberal country, and Flanders actually has a very vibrant, active nationalist movement, like a broad one. So once Flanders becomes independence, you know, I think basically we should bring that movement over to the Netherlands. That's my idea before any form of unity happens. But yeah, I do believe it will happen one day.
Yeah, I see. get what you mean. Do you think? Well, I guess it's similar to us. Like, with the 6 counties, the occupied six. If the regime was to unite Ireland tomorrow as well, like, it wouldn't know how to handle the very outgoing communities that you have up there. The regime, our regime, would not know how to handle it at all. And I bet you a lot of money that they would bring in the British Army to come in and deal with the issue, which would be very embarrassing and very demoralizing. But I wouldn't expect any better from our current regime. I can see us handling the situation a lot better as the National Party. I can see us bringing forward a national government, but the current regime is just an absolute nightmare. And they're the anti-Irish regime, if I'm being quite honest with you. Now, back to the obvious. That was just a little rant. Back to the Netherlands. Do you think that are yous active within? Does your organisation have? Can't remember what you call them, but like commons. It's the little groups or cells within Flanders at all, or are you solely based to the current Netherlands borders?
No, we are active in Flanders. Our branch for the province of Brabant. It does not only span the Dutch province of North Brabant, but also the Belgian provinces of Antwerp and South Brabant or Flemish Brabant. So yeah, we are active in Flanders. We hope to be a lot more active in Flanders. Our main activities are in the Netherlands, but hopefully one day
that's very cool.
We will be everywhere.
We are everywhere. Very cool. And do you think? Now, obviously, you said very negative things about Wallonia, but do you think you would ever have a branch within Wallonia with the Walloons, or is that like out of the question?
There are certain small areas in Wallonia in which Dutch is still spoken or traditionally spoken. I of course won't rule out ever being active in these areas. This would be logical, but if you mean Walloons, like French-speaking Walloons, I don't see a Geuzenbond branch ever being active in Wallonia. Now, should there be a movement in Wallonia which believes in the historical unity of the Low Countries, which isn't a Belgicist movement, I don't see it happening. But may such a movement arise, maybe we can cooperate. But this is daydreaming, basically. Sadly, Wallonia is a very.
Our future is. Yeah, it sounds like a far future. I think there's a bit of a lag. Sorry about that, but there's a bit of lag between us. And also, as a group, as an organization gets bigger, there's always the threat that from within it, the ideological principles get weaker and weaker. And that's a trend that you can see in a lot of groups. Like a perfect example, actually, is the latest elections in Sweden, where the Swedish Democrats, they got elected. They won their coalition, or I don't know how it goes on over there. But the Sweden Democrats 10 years ago were very strong on anti-immigration stances, and right now they have liberalized on a lot of those anti-immigration stances. What do you think? What do you do, I should say, to prevent the ideological weakening of your organization in the future? Because there's always that threat of that happening. But what do you do to prevent ideological weakening from within?
Yeah, sure. So, our organization is founded on principles, on ideology, and recently, actually, we released our ideological principles as a document. We have a few foundational documents which are required for everyone to read, to know. we keep our ideology active. We do internal lectures on these topics. We publish a magazine with our ideology very clearly expressed. So we are a very ideologically focused movement, and I think because we always handle based on our ideological principles, this will not weaken. Also because the principles are now set in document, it should never be changed.
In the event that a leadership change or a leadership council change, they will profess the same authentic Dutch nationalism that their predecessors professed. And within your lectures, do you focus solely 100% on Dutch past nationalist, Dutch how do you say, literature, or do you also include some other European nationalist literature within your?
Yeah, we do include. We always try to focus a lot on Dutch thinkers, Dutch historical personalities, but we do include thinkers from other countries who were important in writing thought. For example, the Conservative Revolution, the New Right. These are all things that inspire us to a certain extent, and we write articles about them. We share stuff from these authors in our internal database. We have had lectures about the Conservative Revolution. So yeah, we are not only a Dutch movement, but we are also a very European-focused movement.
Obviously, like it's not good to heavily focus on Europe too much. It's not good for any nationalist organization, but it is good to bring in and to talk about interesting ideas, interesting movements, and so things that have worked. Basically, that's what I'm trying to say. Things that have worked in other countries that you can take inspiration from, and I find that it's similar to the National Party. When it comes to the party political arena and whatnot, I do find that not copy paste, but I do find that using the NP as a sort of blueprint and to try and replicate it in other countries if they are going to go for, if other nationalist movements are going to go for, how do you say, parliamentary politics, I think it is a very good, useful way to look at how we've operated it, because obviously parliamentarianism is very Cromwellian in its outlook on things, and it doesn't really get anything done realistically. So I do think that the NP's outlook on the whole parliamentarian view of the world is the best, because it's very difficult to maintain nationalist principles within the current democratic institutions, I find. But it is possible, and we can get there.
Yeah, of course, the system is always getting a lot more tyrannical against the dissenters. But yeah, I do think the National Party is a good example of how a 21st century nationalist, a real nationalist party should operate. Hopefully, a lot of more real nationalist parties arise in Europe. I think they will. And hopefully, we finally get a real nationalist party in the Netherlands one day as well.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. It'll happen. You can see all over Europe the Overton window is shifting further to the right. Like it's becoming normalized that these candidates, like although the likes of Marine Le Pen isn't ideologically on our side, she isn't exactly one of us, but she's perceived as being the big scary far right. She's perceived as all these things, and she did reasonably well in the presidentials, and her party did very well in the, how would you say, in the Assemblée elections that they had. They got over 80 80 deputies elected, which it's in the right direct. Things are moving in the right direction. Obviously, these groups are not the heroes of Europe. They're not the heroes of their country. These groups, in the long run, if they do not get pushed out of the way by authentic nationalists, they will do far more damage in the long run. But for now, it's good to see things are moving in the right direction.
You know, it shows people are looking for alternatives.
Well, that's it. That's it. People are looking for alternatives. And with what's to come, with the rise in inflation, the housing crisis, I know you said that the Netherlands has a really bad housing crisis, in Ireland as well. There's a really bad housing crisis, obviously, as an island nation. You know, it's not, housing supply isn't infinite, although the leftists, they like to scribble out posters and scribble out stickers that say, how's the Irish, not the world. They scribble out to say, how's the world, which is absolutely impossible.
It's funny, isn't it? The left, like, they present themselves as the, you know, they have the solution for the housing crisis, but at the same time, you know, they want to house the world.
Exactly. It's you're throwing you're just throwing more coal to the fire, essentially, and it's just going to get worse. It'll just balloon into something massive. But with that, like, I know that people that I work with, for example, they tell me that they are absolutely sick and tired of seeing foreigners get housing when they're on the housing list. And Patrick Quinlan, our Dublin West representative for the National Party, has done a lot of work with homeless families and getting them housed. And, you know, he'd even tell you that the housing list at this point has mostly foreigners, and not even mostly foreigners, but they seem to be up above on the housing list in the native Irish, within the Irish people. And not only that, but then you have Roderick O'Gorman, and you have the white paper on direct provision that will allow for asylum seekers who aren't genuine, they're absolute scammers, asylum scammers, getting housed within 4 months of reaching the country, you know, regardless of what they did in the past.
You know, it's the same in most places in the Netherlands. You know, asylum seekers actually get a house before they get put above on the list, on the waiting list for a house.
But in saying that, there's a massive shake-up. Society is on its way. You know, between, you know, it'll be the choice of the Great Reset or the Nationalist Reset. And
exactly.
We profess the Nationalist Reset, and every other authentic nationalist in Europe should also profess the Nationalist Reset for their nation, for their people. It can happen. We can win. All we have to do is keep fighting. We will win. We will win. It's Lynn on Tauchi. It's Lynn on Tauchi. But that's it anyways, Jan, unless you want to add anything in as last words for the stream.
Yeah, some last words. You know, it's been a pleasure talking to you. And, you know, I wish you the best of luck in your political struggle. And I look forward to any future cooperation.
Absolutely, 100%, Jan. It was great having you on. And that, everybody, was Jan from Geuzenbond. So thank you all for listening. Agus Lina on Tauchi. Gur míle mágah.